Hashem's Vasai Tifzach Uv'Yagito Sacha. We're now in the 6th parak of Daniel. In this parak, we're now switching gears to Daryavish. Daryavish, who is Darius the Mede. Remember, Paras Umadai. And he has the kingdom for a very, very short while, and he's 62 years old when he takes over the kingdom. Now, why is that significant? Because as a result, in order to really solidify his power, because he's an older guy, he decided that it was a good idea to appoint 120 people, like basically dividing up his kingdom so that, and over them were 3 ministers. One, of course, is our Daniel, who seems to be, go from kingdom to kingdom. And he is, these ministers are going to basically filter out who is going to see the king, and the rest of the issues are going to be taken care of by Daniel and these 2 other ministers. And so what's happening now is a little bit reminiscent of King Achashverosh, who has 127 provinces. Here, there are basically 120 provinces, and to suggest that he is ruling over a very large piece of land with a lot of people, and also Daniel, who is, we have a lot of that Yosef story where Yosef had risen to power, and he is second in command. Here, basically, Daniel is second in command, and everyone really finds that Daniel is a perfect person. He is extraordinary. He is kind and good and virtuous, in addition to being brilliant, a real shidduch catch. And ultimately what happens when there is a system where there are people that, in a kind of a feudal system where there are different hierarchies of people, then ultimately that breeds jealousy. And, what level are you on? What level is he on? When there's just one ruler, then, okay, you can have China's against the king, but it's different. And here, it's very interesting to understand that that's not what's going on. What's going on is it's breeding jealousy. And it's very significant. We say in Elokai Nitzor, if you're going to say the one in Nusach Svard, that you don't want anybody to be jealous of you, and you don't want to be jealous of anybody else, because ultimately jealousy is a midah, a quality that that is something that we know from time immemorial. We had Cain and Hevel, we had the Acha Yosef, to suggest that it's a natural case. It's one of the feelings. And it might not be based on reality, because if you really think about it, and if you'll be tachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then you understand that everything that you're given, that Hashem, as we've mentioned many a times, Hashem is limitless. And because he has no limits, he could technically give every single person everything, and he doesn't, because those are not the tools that they need to reach their highest potential. Now, of course, the ministers and the people in the King Darius's domain are not Jewish people, but I believe that most of Daniel were supposed to be learning stories. They're kind of like mashalim almost. Look at what happened with them. Meaning, I'm not going to point a finger at you people who are perhaps violating many of, sinas chinam rules, but, that is something to look at and to highlight on ourselves. So what ultimately happens is that they decide that the best thing to do is that we're not going to find any faults with Daniel, so we have to go even lower. We have to really do some mudslinging. And they came up with a different idea. And that idea is to present to King Darius, to Daryavish, that, what would be the best thing to really make sure that your kingdom is solidified. Now remember, he's a paranoid-ish king. He's creating a situation where he makes sure that, that his power is not never going to be usurped, and that he really is, with this whole system. So they understand that that's something he's not mochel on his kavod. He likes his kavod. And so what they do is exactly that. They speak to his lowest level, and they say that there should be a royal ban. And the royal ban should be that nobody should petition any of their gods or any people except for you for the next 30 days. And if they don't, then they should be thrown into the lion's den. Now, what's the significance of that? Who cares? Okay, so, people in the kingdom are not allowed to ask for anything from anybody else except from the king. But what that does is that bans davening. Now, davening, which of course was instituted, the words of the davening with the Anshe Knesset Hadola, and that is something that was done, and that is a d'Rabbanan. It is not, the words of the tefillah are not a d'oraisa. It's not according to the Torah, but it's according to the rabbis who instituted it for either it is instead of the karbanos, or it is a way that we can connect to Hashem, in Galus, and it has within it, the idea of Shevach, Bakasha, and Hoda'ah. We have the idea of praising Hashem, asking Hashem, and then thanking Hashem. And so what they're really saying is that this is great because we're going to put him in a double jeopardy position. If on the one hand, what does he do? If he doesn't daven because he's afraid, then great, his God's never going to save him now. Like, look, you just, you threw out davening, who's going to save you? And then if he does not follow the petition, then he'll be killed by the king. He'll be thrown in the lion's den. And this king, again, a little bit reminiscent of Achashverosh with Haman, and being able to, make decisions based on his wise advisors, decides that, okay, we're going to put that ban in writing. It sounds like a good idea. I think it would be great for everyone just to, search me out and think of just in me, and doesn't think about the consequences of his actions. But when Daniel learns that had been put into writing, what does he do? He goes directly to his house, to the upper chambers that had windows that were facing Yerushalayim, where he davened 3 times a day. He prayed, he knelt very far down, and basically, all the way down, and he just continued to do what he was supposed to do. So he's saying mincha, and what happens? Now, we have to ask ourselves the following question. We just finished saying that isn't one of the 3 cardinal sins for which you're supposed to martyr and dedicate and sacrifice your life. How could he do that? For davening? Davening's not, according to most, something that is not according to the Torah. It's according to the rabbis. It's helpful. It's a mitzvah aseh, something you could do, but we don't have as part of the rules that if you can't do a mitzvah, that you're supposed to die, right? We're not supposed to sacrifice our lives for the sake of a mitzvah that could be done this is not the situation that Hashem tells us that we're supposed to dedicate our life. So there are a lot of different ways to interpret this. One is, remember, Daniel is dealing with king. And when it comes to kings, other kings, when it comes to the idea of somebody within a kingship that who is pretty much acting like he is going to be a god, it's a type of avodah zarah, and in that case, so it might not be exactly a statue, but it's pretty much someone who's acting in the way of avodah zarah, and so for that reason, Daniel is warranted. Another way is that Daniel is the highest representative right now in Galus of what it is to be a king. And he has a real responsibility towards the people who are watching him, who care about him. And it begs the question that we must ask ourselves, who's watching us? What responsibility do we have as human beings within society, if we're well known in society, if we have we have children who are learning from us, if we have families, if we're part of a community, if we're part of a shul, and where do we have that responsibility to be our best self? Now, not a fake self, but our best self. And here, Daniel is being his real self by saying that, that I am going to remain the role model in Galus, and I am going to daven. Now, perhaps the rabbis kind of even get around it by saying, you know what, he was davening. But first of all, he was davening in private. So he didn't think he was going to be caught. Now, he didn't know that there were going to be spies, but there were spies. And the spies were there, unbeknownst to him. So he wasn't really putting himself in danger. He was just going about his merry way in private, not thinking that anything was going to happen. But of course, there were spies that were going to catch him. Or that he was davening. But remember, we said there are 3 parts to davening. There are shevach, bakasha, and hoda'ah. So he wasn't doing the bakasha part. He wasn't doing the asking part, but he was doing the other parts. Thank you, Hashem. You're amazing. We actually learn a couple of halachos from Daniel's davening. First of all, when davening, it's always better to daven in a room with windows facing Eretz Yisrael. And when you're in Eretz Yisrael, you face Yerushalayim. When you're in Yerushalayim, you face the Kotel. And your heart always has to be exactly where, Libi b'Mizrach. It's very interesting. The rabbi said not only should you look towards Yerushalayim, or towards Eretz Yisrael, but you should actually be in Eretz Yisrael. So if you're looking towards Israel, but you're able to be in Israel, be in Israel. But be that as it may, we also learned that he bowed very far down. He was basically on the ground. And there's a halacha that says that however the higher they are, the more that they should kneel down. And so because he was the highest official in Bavel, in Galus, in Paras Umadai, then that was really where, he was literally on the floor. And ultimately, unfortunately, they catch him and they tell the king, and the king, they remind him of the royal band. You remember, you said the 30 days, he's got to go into the lion's den. And he said, yeah, you know what? A law is a law. We know that from Achashverosh. The only way that Achashverosh was able to change the trajectory of his ruling was to create another ruling. But he doesn't do that. And instead, they say that, Daniel was the one. He is, again, of the B'nai Gelusa di Yehud. Anti-Semites are very consistent. They call a Jew, regardless of any other characteristic and any other version of a Jew. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew, and so he really should be punished. And it really bothered the king. Darius doesn't know what to do. His heart he doesn't want to, because he knows the value of Daniel. He knows the purity. Daniel was a walking Kiddush Hashem. Again, a lesson in life. There was only Kiddush Hashem. He only did what was right. And he did it in a way that was not offensive to the king. The king respected him. And sometimes, you think that being different is a bad thing. But the purity in which he did that really suggested that he was a walking Kiddush Hashem. And so he said, did you not know what was going on? I can't do anything about this. This is a unalterable sanction and an oath. And so what does the king say to Daniel? Your God, whom you serve so regularly, the God of Elakai di ant palachle betrida hu yishzi ni nach. What does that mean? Your God, whom you serve so regularly, please, he will save you. And so ultimately, you see that the king has a respect for Daniel and a respect for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he believes that if he's going to be saved, he's going to be saved, which is reminiscent of an interesting Orach Chaim that not everybody holds by this, but the Orach Chaim says that when the brothers had a choice, they could either kill Yosef or they can throw him in the pit, which had snakes and scorpions, seemingly the same thing. And they had, their rationale was a little bit different. Their rationale was like this. Man can choose to kill or not kill, because we have Bechira. But snakes and scorpions, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can make a miracle. He's in charge of their natural way. And so they really thought that maybe, if Yosef was really deserving of death, then Hashem, will make them kill. And not, he can do something about nature. And the king is seemingly thinking about that as well. Your God will handle this. This is in the realm of nature, so you don't have to worry. And they take a rock and they put it over the mouth of the lion's den. Again, why a lion's den? And that is, remember, Daniel is from Shevet Yehuda. And Shevet Yehuda is the lion. Right? And not only that, but Goyim are also, the reference is that they are lions. In Tehillim, that's exactly what we know that David HaMelech asks. He asks to be saved, and Hoshi'enu mipi aryeh, please save me from the lion. And what's also interesting is that what was in Israel when they were against Iran, it was the plan, the whole initiative was the rising lion. So we've been associated with Yehuda as the lion, and the enemy has also been, used as a lion. Well, ultimately what happens is the king puts that all night he is on shpilkas. He fasts. He can't sleep. Clearly you see that he's not the worst one. He's clearly not the same person as Nebuchadnezzar or Belshazzar. And really early that morning, much earlier, he is one of those kings that wake up early. Not all kings even did that. And he runs to the lion's den and he says, Daniel, oh gosh, are you still alive? Did your Hashem save you and deliver you from the lions? And of course Daniel's like, yep, yes, king, you may live forever, long live the king. And he cannot believe it. He is just, wow. And Daniel says, yes, an angel did. An angel just gave, the lion did not injure me and save me. And some say that the Midrash says that Hashem sent a lion, a mystical lion to scare away the other lions. But ultimately, the king is very glad, and he's brought out of the den and no injury. And then the king gives an order that no one is allowed to slander anyone related to Daniel or any of the Jewish people. And the people who gave this Lashon Hara, and you see the value and the power of Lashon Hara, who ends up being at the end of all this, who succumbed to the lions? And that is, of course, those people. The lions overpowered them, crushed all their bones. And you see again, it's kind of like, kind of pointing a finger at somebody else as a mushal for what you should not do. Do not speak Lashon Hara, because the person who speaks Lashon Hara is ultimately the one who gets crushed. And so and stay away from it, and have respect for all people, the way that it's intended. Use your words, let's don't use your words for Lashon Hara. And ultimately, that's exactly what King Darius writes. He writes to all the people in every language that you should just know that everyone should fear Hashem, the living God, the one, Daniel's God. His kingdom is indestructible, and it will be there till the end of time. And you see that it's an amazing thing. And that therefore Daniel prospers, and he continues. Now, Darius only lasts for the year, so that's the end of him. But Daniel won't. He is like the Energizer Bunny that keeps going, spreading his goods, spreading his wonders. And just to leave with this, when we have this idea of Ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, Shehei Shamayim Ahuv al Yadecha, what does it mean to love Hashem? To love Hashem is that love transfers over to everyone else, and through your being, through your goodkeit, through the way that you act, you bring other people to love Hashem. And that's what it really means to love. It's like that overflowing, and that you become a walking example of what it means to be L'Shem Shamayim. And Daniel is amazing. And And so for that reason, we learn about tefillah. We learn about the power of words. Your words can either hurt and lead in the direction that continues the elements of jealousy, and or you can use your power of tefillah. Immediately upon hearing about a bad decree, he davens. And he wasn't just davening for himself every day. He looked at into Yerushalayim through those windows and was davening for all of Klal Yisrael. And Mirz Hashem, we should continue to be able to get there to that the Klal Yisrael, we all as a team should be able to get to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim, to everything that Daniel was asking for. But in the meantime, we really must focus our words, our actions, and our behaviors, and who better to show us than the Goyim who lived the world, the experience, and we benefit from their downfall.